For some odd reason, construction vehicles are fun to use in any game where you can go behind the wheel. In Twisted Metal, Mr. Slam is the signature one, who I'm sure most of you have tried at least once. So today, we are going to look at every version of Mr. Slam in the Twisted Metal series. For the first time in one of these videos, this character did not debut in Twisted Metal 1, but instead its sequel, standing out amongst the rest for sure, a similar vibe to what Sweet Tooth brought beforehand. When we look at the spectacular driver, learning how Simon Whittlebone here lost his job, they stole his tower, he's getting upset to the point he talks about himself in third person, gathering his bearings, ready to fight society head on. Also making whatever this facial expression is. The instant you spawn in, you will surely drive up to an enemy and see how this special weapon will work in your favor. It's incredibly powerful with raw damage output, even without doing any combos. Not only this, but there is something very satisfying about slamming your opponent into the pavement or whatever surface you're hitting them against. The graphical effect and sound mesh so well together, creating a very gratifying feeling that a lot of other specials don't have. What makes the experience even better is how you're able to shoot an enemy while having them gripped. Napalm seemed to be the most effective with dealing maximum damage, but you can also do this with remote bombs, practically killing some enemies instantly. All you need is a freeze and weaker armored cars like Spectre, Grasshopper, and Twister. They're just dead in a heartbeat. Now, obviously, Mr. Slam cannot be a mess in every facet, since he drives around as if chicken grease is on his tires. Any attempt at making tighter turns is just not gonna work in your favor. It appears going slow and steady with his bitch ass is the best way to approach most situations, also being very careful of your surroundings due to having this atrocious maneuverability. I'm just glad we're equipped with a great offensive capability, unlike some other characters who suck in every way possible, but that's a story for a different day. Another interesting tidbit with Mr. Slam is that the player is able to hold the special in the air instead of just letting go, allowing you to time it and line up your hit, coming in handy with the horrible handling Mr. Slam has. I never really found myself using it very much because it's very situational, but at least you have the option. At this point, I'm sure you're thinking there's nothing wrong with Mr. Slam, he has it all, an overpowered construction vehicle with a little bit of a handling problem. Unfortunately, there's a little bit more to this that makes him not as powerful. You may notice when trying to pick up Hammerhead, the claws just can't do it. They hit his top and bounce off, doing a little bit of damage, just nowhere compared to using it on a regular character, which this also stems to bosses as well. And yes, I know it would be ridiculous to grab Darktooth and flail him around like a pool noodle, but the fact your special is essentially useless against bosses makes those fights a bit harder. Mr. Slam feels useless during both of the battles, honestly. You're a giant vehicle that controls horribly with slower speed and a special that you can't use. Well, you can use it and deal a little bit of damage, but whether you survive that encounter is a different tale. Unless you are a person who is able to course the power of Twisted Metal 5 through your veins, Darktooth can possibly be defeated by only using Mr. Slam's special to give us our ending. We see Samuel Whittlebone driving in, still holding his termination papers. Him saying he couldn't get over it was no understatement. Whittlebone is asking Calypso for help, screaming, "Please help me build my tower," as he sits there looking like an untreated wart. Where I believe he wished for life to turn into creative mode, having infinite materials to build the one and only tower. The thing soars above the earth, it appears. How he's not suffocating is beyond me. As he dances around, he goes closer to the edge, falls stories down, and dies. Again, where I question what's going on here because his body is still intact. After falling that large of a distance, you'd assume he would just splatter into dust. I guess they didn't want to get too gory yet, giving off a very, I don't know. I honestly don't really know what to say about this. It's fine. It fits with the character. He drives a construction vehicle. He enjoys construction, wants to do endless amounts of it, just dies to his own stupidity for standing by the edge. This will generate a small laugh, but nothing too memorable or gripping. But thankfully, the playthrough itself gives me that feeling. From memory, this is actually the first character I ever played in Twisted Metal 2 as a kid. There is a very enjoyable aura from Mr. Slam, even looking at the negatives, or one big negative rather, that being how you cannot use your special on bosses. Outside of that stink, anyone could lock this guy in and have a great time with it. There are some who consider Mr. Slam to be overpowered here, and I can see the vision. If you purely look at how you're able to instantly kill someone who has weaker armor with the right combo attacks, which is also a nice feature, by the way, adding in some extra depth to the gameplay, but I don't think I would go that far to call him overpowered, but he's still a fantastic choice on the roster and this series overall. We didn't see Mr. Slam in Twisted Metal 3, instead, Augur was born here, most likely to play 4D chess to create what I call the Brothers of Construction in Twisted Metal 4. Only wrestling fans will understand that one. Twisted Metal 4 brought both Augur and Slam together at last, becoming bosses and adding an extra M to Slam's name for some reason. A part of me feels like this was a typo and someone laughed at it and just left it in during development. If you want to experience Super Slam here, you just need to finish the game once to unlock every boss. Surely he will not be on your priority list since Sweet Tooth will be available, where your curiosity will go more in the direction of him for obvious reasons. But if you do decide to lock in Super Slam, you can expect a very slow, clunky vehicle as expected. His acceleration is awful, like no joke. This thing goes from 0 to 60 in 10 years. Making it difficult for you to actually land the Slam special attack. In Twisted Metal 2, controlling yourself was a little bit tighter overall, so the bad handling wasn't too big of a deal. Here, you can really notice the struggle of not being able to turn the way you'd like to. Thankfully, you have a few chances for your attack to land. After activation, your lift will continue to go up and down. As long as you connect during that time frame, you'll be good to get at least some damage off. And of course, the damage is shit, just like practically every special weapon in Twisted Metal 4. Not a shock to anyone who's played this game. Impact across the board is mediocre at best. When it comes to Slam, it kind of removes the excitement Twisted Metal 2's iteration gave us. But that does not mean it's completely useless. Just like Orbital, his special empowers Twisted Metal 4's most broken bug, which is a glitch with weapon cycling, letting you shoot weapons much faster than normal. So using his special, shielding, and then going crazy with your entire arsenal can outright kill enemies depending on their armor. Most weaker targets like Captain Grimm or Quattro, even average armored ones like Jones's family, can get obliterated by this. When you abuse this bug, it does kinda bring us more in line with the Twisted Metal 2 Slam feeling. Still, unfortunately, below it, but this is the best we can do. Instead of comparing them to Twisted Metal 2 Slam the whole time, we have one more positive that knocks my socks off and sucks my cock off, a secret maneuver that allows Super Slam to transcend into a different reality. Some could call this a mating call, whatever this is right here. Whenever two characters who have grappling specials collide and both activate their special, this happens, making them fly around all over the place, sometimes rocketing into the sun and dying, creating so many funny moments. If you put a bunch of Slams, Trashmans, Crushers, and Augurs into a battlefield together on hard mode, you are bound to see at least two of them freaking out in the air. This is genuinely one of the greatest things in this entire franchise. Outside of this, we sadly have no more to delve into here because Twisted Metal 4 bosses do not have drivers. All you get to see is a generic ending that I believe was designed for the creator cars and just given to all the boss characters, which sucks. But from what Jim told me, the answer is, you guessed it, no time. Regardless, I'm still glad we can get some enjoyment out of Super Slam, even though he doesn't have a driver, as long as you utilize the exploit or make him fly around using that special glitch. If possible, the true best experience is making the Brothers of Construction become a reality and get a real-life human being to play as one brother and you play as the other, allowing you to do mating calls on command, plus ganging up on everyone else is fun, creating a pretty enjoyable playthrough, honestly. It would be a few more years until we got to see good old Slam again, removing the Mr. part in Small Brawl. Due to him being a kid here, it makes a bit of sense, even though he appears to be older than the others. Reading his bio, we get to see how Slam here is in fact older than the rest of the children, and he's entered the contest because Calypso destroyed his treehouse. Fair enough reason for a kid to want to kill someone. Slam follows suit in what we have talked about already with previous iterations. Heavier armor, bad handling, which doesn't entirely matter. In Twisted Metal Black and Small Brawl, when a character has bad handling, you don't really notice it unless you actually look. since the overall control is so tight and fluid across the board regardless of stats. Similar to Twisted Metal 2, we are able to hold Slam Scooper, or whatever you want to call this thing, in the air by holding down the special button, adding that extra layer in. If you wanted to time it for an enemy shield to go away, for instance, then activate your special weapon, you're able to do that. But what's interesting here is how if you miss, Slam has a shockwave that goes around him after hitting the ground. The damage is obviously not great. Still nice to get some value out of your special, even if you miss though. It just launches people in the air, getting them out of your way. From memory, David Goodrich told me they wanted to make some satisfaction be in the player's hands if they were to miss the initial activation, which makes even more sense if you consider how this game was made for a younger audience. The pieces start coming together. When you actually do hit an enemy though, you rip quite a bit of their health away, not as much as Twisted Metal 2, just enough to give off satisfaction. Unfortunately, we cannot shoot, so the player is purely relying on damage from hitting a ram than whatever you're able to dish out with the special. It's a questionable thing. On one hand, not being able to shoot while gripping an enemy with Slam can make sense from a balance perspective, as we saw with Twisted Metal 2, which I need to keep referring back to because that slam is probably the best one in the franchise. We saw how powerful being able to shoot while the special is active can be. On the other hand, satisfaction of using the special does get taken away when you cannot shoot with it being active. Pulling off the combos is something a lot of people enjoy doing. It's a weird situation to be in. So I guess that's all up in the air. Just like how in Small Brawl, we are able to pick up everyone into the air, even bosses. Both Trapper and Piecemeal can be locked into the grip, so you can toss them around. When I look at this, a part of me really wishes that we could have done this to Darktooth before, because with Piecemeal, the guy being flailed around looks really strange, and I'm sure Darktooth would have looked even more ridiculous, and it would definitely help with the boss fight overall. It sure as shit does here, making the playthrough with Slam here pretty easy, much more so than Twisted Metal 4 Super Slam on Immortal difficulty, which was a nightmare. Most enemies won't be able to take you down due to the higher armor and exceptional damage output. Even the boss fights go relatively well, on normal at least. Hard is a different story. For our ending, Calypso gets picked on by the bigger kid, where Slam digs a hole, burying Calypso up to his neck in sand, and then dropping an outhouse on him, quite literally giving us a toilet humor ending, which fits perfectly for the game. Nothing really else to say, it's just a knee slapper. We do have one more major positive that Slam brings to the table, which is a tactic when it comes to unlocking characters. One of the best things Small Brawl and also Black did was having the ability to unlock characters in various ways by finding them or performing certain actions in game. In Small Brawl, you are required to unlock the character Mime to play as bosses, where you need to get 30 kills in a single endurance mode match to unlock Holiday Havoc, where you get the Mime character. This may sound daunting, but Slam and also Twister make this incredibly easy to do, or just cut down a significant amount of time. Small Brawl has quite a few environmental hazards that Slam can abuse very easily, mainly on Treetop Rumble. This level can be exploited no problem. Grab an enemy and keep throwing them off the side, granting you an instant kill, allowing you to burn 30 enemies away and unlock Holiday Havoc to get Mime. And this obviously stems to a regular tournament playthrough. Throwing enemies off of the treehouse works perfectly to get that level out of your way. Same with Meet Your Maker, where enemies can be thrown into that grinder to give you instant kills as well. The creativity is honestly nice here. We have a lot to utilize when it comes to where we want to throw people or what we want to do with our special weapon. I'm a big fan of this Slam iteration. Small Brawl's level design plays a big part in that as well, giving fun ways to play around with the special weapon, even without Cheese. He's a great character. Your armor is sturdy enough to not really worry about anything. Sure, he has bad handling, but that doesn't really matter in this game, to be honest. If you haven't tried this Slam out, it's definitely worth your time. The experience is undoubtedly a great one. In Head-On, just like Twisted Metal 4, Slam is once again an unlockable character, where unlocking characters is obviously a good thing. Unfortunately, we need to play one of the mini-games to unlock him. The stupendous experience we need to have is the LA mini-game, which is thankfully quite easy and not really much of a problem. Just going down a highway, avoiding obstacles like wrecking balls, explodable barrels, and driving into oncoming traffic hoping to not cause an automobile wreck. After beating the par time, we are rewarded with Mr. Slam and a few other things we picked up from the race. This iteration is a continuation of Twisted Metal 2 Slam. Whittlebone is back as a ghost, pissed off that he is dead. There is still so much more work left to do and he cannot do it, so he is hoping to become reborn again. And I'm sure it's quite obvious how this story will end up going when you reach the finish line with the wording there. When you load in, you may realize this is the same exact model seen in Twisted Metal Harbor City, where talking about balance is always going to be a hard one with Head-On, because I've always felt literally every character feels virtually the same due to how the game is balanced overall. Upgrades were implemented poorly and everyone becomes overpowered during a playthrough. It's kind of like that when everything is special, nothing is kind of feeling. We are of course still given the expected heavier armor, whack-ass speed and handling, which you can actually notice here. Head-On isn't as tight as Black or Small Brawl to me when it comes to controlling characters, so that is something you would need to take into account when trying to use your special, but we're playing Twisted Metal Head-On on PS2, where landing attacks is very lenient, so this won't really matter when trying to hit your special anyways. Being the exact same as every other game, picking someone up and slamming them down. Very simple, dealing a solid amount of damage with a single use. Again, just like Small Brawl, we are not able to shoot while the special is activated, and if you look at it, we got two versions that can shoot and two versions that can't. There seems to be a stylistic battle for how Slam's special should function, apparently. One thing I will say that's interesting about this special's functionality is how after you throw an enemy once the slamming finishes, they are typically in a perfect trajectory for you to shoot them in midair with missiles or maybe a napalm if you're fast enough to swap over to one, letting you get some semblance of a combo going on. Also, with this easy to understand trajectory, we are able to toss enemies off of rooftops or into what few hazards Head-On has at our disposal. Granted, it's not as extravagant as Small Brawl because almost none of the environmental interactions outright kill anyone, where in Small Brawl you have some that do, but at least there is an option to pull this off if you so choose. Adding some sort of intrigue to your playthrough, because obviously when you get your upgrade, Slam feels like if Jesus got off the cross and started hitting people with it. Being practically invincible with armor and also having one of the few interesting upgraded special weapons. If you charge up that bar, he's able to launch his scooper out at an enemy, pull the person back in and throw them, which is a pretty nice way to go about it rather than him just dealing more damage or something. Using this can help a lot if an enemy is trying to run away from you. Just grab them and then throw the car back into a corner and pummel them to death. Thankfully, we are able to do this to bosses as well, regardless of the vehicle's size, even Power Tooth, which looks kinda weird and glitches out a little bit. It's just funny seeing a little ass construction vehicle picking up an entire building and slamming it on the ground. After defeating the monstrous clown building, we are able to see our ending. As I said in the beginning, surely everyone expected what would happen. Simon Whittlebone wishes to be reborn, and he is quite literally reborn as a baby, being forced to grow up again so he can work on his tower. It's just another certified classic Twisted Metal knee slapper. You can't really get anything else from it. Bringing our Head-On Mr. Slam extravaganza to an end, where again, it's really difficult to gauge a power level on how effective he is overall in comparison to the other characters on the roster. Not to say he isn't an enjoyable guy. Thankfully, we're able to throw people around into hazards or traps, line up shots better, what have you, so there is some fun to be had. But if we put this version next to the others we've talked about, I don't really think being able to grab enemies from a distance really compares to what they have to offer from a gameplay standpoint, making me kind of iffy overall on this one. And with that, this is every Slam in Twisted Metal. There's only 4 this time. When we covered Roadkill and Sweet Tooth before, there was much more to delve into and more to talk about. With this character, everything's more cut and dry, so there's no real sense of including a ranking here and just leaving the whole situation as is. It was really interesting looking at every iteration of one of my favorite characters to play in the franchise. I don't think there's a single bad version of Slam. He's either top tier, scratching the broken territory, or just a slightly above average character. Something I guess you can expect from an automobile that crushes others against the pavement. As always, make sure to leave your thoughts on all of the Slams and which one your favorite is in the comments below.